Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 40 of the All in Football Fantasy Premier League Show podcast. I'm your host, the self-proclaimed FPL Guru, Alex Rex, and joining me today, all on his lonesome, Scott Williams. Scotty, how you doing today?
Not too bad, thanks, mate. Not too bad. Been missing this podcast, to be honest. Podcast equals the fact we've got some Premier League football coming back, which is much more exciting than some of the drab we had to watch over the course of the last few days.
Damn right it is. I'll just touch base quickly on like the video if you are watching this. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels and then follow us on All in Football Pod, All in Football P on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And this week we'll be discussing the Wildcard Template, game weeks 9 through 16. Have a quick look at some injury news, some selection issues. I'll review our league, our mini league, give out 2 Manager of the Month awards because I don't think I covered August. At least I can't remember doing so. And if I did, then I'm going to do it again and then do September. And we'll cover a few talking points of the season so far, as well as having a quick look at our England ideas. That's what we're going to have a quick gander at anyway as well. So let's start off first of all by reviewing the All in Football Fantasy Premier League. So, Manager of the Week last week, our favourite Hunjan by a long, long, long way to Ravi and beyond, named after a wonderful, wonderful child. 76 points for Dimple Hunjan. Well done. You beat your husband by 2 points and then someone else by 1 point. No, I can't remember who it was.
Jeff, I think I saw it there. I think
was it Jeff at 75? So Pope with 2 points, Trippier, Cancelo, Saliba, the man I said under no circumstances to pick, Bailey, De Bruyne, Martinelli, Andres Pereira, Kane, Jesus, and Captain Haaland. So well done to Dimple Hunjan, massive green arrows. And I see that she's top of her advanced Leeds office league.
So go on, Dimple.
Let's make sure that you're beating our very good friend Martin Wheel. He always gets a negative shout out, doesn't he? Every single time on this.
Brings it on himself, really.
Yeah, he does. I always feel a little bit mean, but don't worry, Martin. You're doing badly this season, just like me. It's quick Manager of the Month award. So I don't know if I shouted out Nicola Tomlinson for being Manager of the Month for August. If I didn't, well done. You are our first Manager of the Month of the season. David Burns second and Jeff Belcher in third. Scott, there you are in fifth.
I was going to say, round up the top 5, come on.
Barry Stokes and Scott Williams. And then our favourite Hughes, Will, was sixth. So well done to all the August managers. And then we only had a couple of game weeks in September. So a pretty poor selection of football, really it was, and obviously for passing the Queen, etc. But Jeff Belcher topped by 1 point over Cully Matharu. So well done, Jeff, with 126 points. Cully 125. And DC, well done, Dan Clark, 121. Steve Cousins, 116. And then Sandy Punjan rounding off the top 5. And just so we all know, I was 13th. In that,
well done, mate. I'm not even on that graphic. That was a good one.
Yeah, you're at 21st, just ahead of Tom, who's 22nd. You got exactly the same amount of points.
Only 27 points off top, though. Like you say, we've been a small month. It's not the end of the world, is it?
No, not at all. So we're gonna. I'll do a quick cover off of the international break in terms of the injury news. So a couple of injuries to watch out for. Alexander Isak had to come back from the Sweden squad. So there's potential that he's out, so make sure you keep an eye on the injury news. Nathan Patterson looks like a longer-term one till the end of October. So if you went for him on your wild card, that's me. Then he was one of my bench options to come on. So unfortunately, he had Southampton. He might have even been selected this week for me, and he's out. And yeah, just keep a really close eye out on other injuries who are coming back from the Nations League games and obviously travelling around the world. Some really good results for some players. So, for example, I think Richarlison got 2 goals, Mitrovic got a couple of goals. Son got a goal, another goal after his ridiculous hat trick.
Son's scored a worldie from a free kick, I think, didn't he? It was a brilliant goal.
Yeah, in the 3-3, was it Costa Rica or something?
Mitrovic as well, by the way. I've seen it to 50 goals. It's looking like 75 games. Quicker than anyone ever.
Madness. Absolute madness. But well done to him. And there's a reason why he is in every single template draft and everything else that comes along with it. Portugal, of course, getting some good returns. I think Bruno got an assist and then some other returns. Diego Dallo got his first ever goal. So for Portugal, so there was some interesting bits. So because international football has been so topical, I just wanted to touch base on England briefly. I wanted to get your thoughts, Scotty. Just a quick, small section on what you make of the Nations League and the fact that we haven't won a game in 6, and yeah, just our form going into the World Cup. And then what we'll have a look at is potentially what we think the England lineup should be briefly, which I'll put up on the screen now. Scotty, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're answering this question after 65 minutes on Monday, my answer would be extremely worried. Now, I think we saw enough in that last 25 minutes to show that, bloody hell, when we're playing in our players in the right position, playing attacking football, that's our strength. It's not defending. We all know that. It's attacking. I've got some of the best attacking players out of any country in the world. So as soon as we played to our strength, we looked completely different team. Must say Saka and Mount, when they came on, were fantastic, and you've got to give credit to the manager for that. He's made 2 really good substitutions. So I think we get carried away, and I'm always the one that will always look at other teams. France nearly got relegated, and we all think France are an incredible team. So I think the Nation League is brilliant. It brings better competitive football. Now we need to get our arse in gear and get up to the top division again. So we can, I'm sure we will. The next time around, I'm thinking we'll go straight back up. But yeah, it's good because it tests yourself against some of the best teams. Look, we should have beaten Germany, let's be honest. We're a better team on Monday, I think, by quite far. And we just, we got edged out of a poor game by Italy. So I don't think there's anything too concerned about. I don't think people's expectations were too high anyway going into this World Cup. It's a bit different. We've obviously, I think being an England fan, I know this is why I feel like we've done so well recently. We're due a crap tournament. So it's kind of the way I see it. I don't know about yourself, Al, but
it's interesting, isn't it? Because we do have there's so many different narratives that get spun about this England team, isn't there? There's we've got so much strength in depth. Look at the amazing selection of talent that we've got, and then the next conversation is we haven't got a centre back. None of them are good enough to play in a 4. They've got to play in a 5 or whatever. And obviously there's the Maguire debate. He's not looked good for a long time for club in particular, and now he's done it. Had a really bad 20 minutes for country. Yeah, I don't know. I still think we can win. For exactly the point you're saying, I still think we can win the World Cup.
Yeah.
And the exact point you're saying. So I'll come back to the graphic that's on screen. But just in terms of form, the only team that really shown any really good form is the Netherlands in the last 6. They've won 5, drawn 1. This is, of course, for European nations. I have got a graphic just up here for the other international teams, for example, the South Americans and etc. But actually, there's not really any other teams that blow me away. I mean, Spain have won 3, drawn 2, lost 1. France were not doing much better than that. They were even further down the table from what I can remember. Couldn't even find. There they go. France's form was 1-1, drawn 2, lost 3.
Yeah.
So,
and we look at that France team, and I always think it's still frightening, that squad. They can put 2 teams out and their second team could be easily competitive to win the World Cup.
It really could. And it wasn't that one I was looking for. Find it quickly. Alex, there we go. So in terms of the other form teams, you've got Brazil and Argentina. Neither of them have lost in their last 6, and they played each other and drew, I think, in that time. So you've got, I think, when I'm looking at the World Cup, I think the main teams we'll be looking at might be Brazil and Argentina, and then it's kind of, I think it's probably one of the most open tournaments we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I don't think there's any out and out ones. I think we're going into the last tournament. France were probably, I would say, quite far favourites, wasn't they, with their team? They were sort of overdue a win, I would say. I would just say with Brazil and Argentina, not disrespecting the South American teams, there's just not as much quality that they play against when it's these international breaks. That's why I like the Nations League.
Yeah, I agree.
We're playing against top teams like Germany, Italy all the time. So it's only going to put us in better stead when we come up against these better teams. I mean, I think if we win the group and win our last 16 game, and again in France they're the same, we're due to meet them in the quarters. And I think that's going to be a real test, obviously, for us. But yeah, I agree. I think teams that can adapt to the heat, because as much as the games are going to be late, it's still going to be hot as hell, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting. But I agree with you. I think Brazil look amazing. Again, I've seen graphics with their strength and depth as well. But again, potentially underperformed for the last few World Cups, you would say.
Weirdly, Serbia and Switzerland are in decent form, and they're in the same group as Brazil. So it's I think it's pretty wide open. That's what I would say on that. And before, obviously we're trying to do a bit more on FPLA, but I wanted to touch base on our England, teams and up here is the squad that just went, plus a few others listed on the side. Except I put Phillips in instead of James Ward-Prowse, which I should have done the other way around. But Pickford, Pope, and Ramsdale seem relatively nailed on. Obviously, Henderson could make it. I feel like that's pretty much always going to be the three keepers that go.
Third keeper's never going to play, let's be honest, unless it's a freak. I think we've realised how good Pickford is. I've always liked Pickford. He can make saves and his distribution is amazing. That's why he's England #1. Pope,
he's been good. He's actually been quite good this season, Pickford as well. I've got to give him credit because actually I think their XG faced is the highest in the league, and they've actually not conceded as many goals anywhere near as they should do. In terms of defence, James and Trippier pretty much always going to go. I'd be shocked if Shaw didn't go, even if he didn't play another minute for United.
The way Gareth Southgate was talking about him after the game, he's going.
Loves him. Loves Shaw. Shaw will get minutes as well. Everyone's like, oh, what if he doesn't play any games for the World Cup? Europa League, he's going to play for United, 100%. And Malacia is a good player, but he is very rotatable for United.
That ball that Shaw played, by the way, to Sterling. Wow.
Yeah. Shaw's one of those players. He can be really, really good. Anyway, and to labour the point of that, but Walker's obviously going to go. Dyer in the middle's pretty much always going to go. Maguire is pretty much always going to go. So Stones. And then it's like whether obviously Trent is a conversation. Has to be. I'd still definitely take him, but he doesn't really fit this system too well. But if we're chasing a game and we go to a back four, or for example, playing a teams like Iran or whatever else, actually he's somebody that can get a bit more license.
It's one of those. If we're playing Iran, for instance, like you say, they're going to be probably trying to just catch us on the counter. Which again, I know Trent does struggle at times, but I think his strength in that game is going to have so much possession. If he can just get that ball in the box for Kane to get, excuse.
For Kane to pick up. Yeah, Scott's clearing his throat for podcast listeners.
Sorry about that. I don't know. I was choking on thin air. But yeah, I think you would take him anyway. Tomorrow, what's the point in taking Tomori Gahey? If you're going to put, do you know what? I've always backed Southgate. You know that. If you're going to put him in a squad, play him. Why are we not seeing Tomori playing, especially against Italy?
Well, I know, especially when he's home ground. But I think Southgate was just trying to play a team to get some momentum. I think he was trying his, but I think that's quite clearly his favourite team, near enough, give or take a player that he started. And then other players like Saka and Mount coming on were trying to make an impression on it. I mean, there's almost zero doubt it's Rice and Bellingham in midfield. Those two are always going to be the two picks.
Yeah.
Phillips isn't going to play enough for City, which was why we all called this beginning. It's a terrible move for him before the World Cup going to City. Like he needed to go. For me, it would have been a better move for him to get loaned back to Leeds for 6 months or something for his World Cup hopes. But obviously, he doesn't want that. He wants his career progression. I totally get it. This is the way it goes, isn't it? And also, you'd have hoped he'd have got some minutes, but then he's been injured with all the fixtures. Henderson has to go. I think he's a good player in the team as well. I know that's a tiny bit debatable, but I think he will. And Mount will go, Foden will go, Saka will go, Grealish will probably end up going, even if he doesn't really play for his club that much.
He's finally come into a bit of form, hasn't he, Grealish? So he played well in the last Prem game, and I must say, when he came on against Italy, he looked the best player on the pitch.
Yeah. And Kane and Sterling are obviously going. Abraham's a debate. I didn't put Rashford in here actually, and Sancho, two players. I typed this up last night at past 11, so I was knackered. So I even missed my own two United players off. But Rashford and Sancho have got to be in the mix, I think, because I think they've both played really, really well in the last 6 games for Man United. They've won five of the last 6, United. The only game they lost was on that ridiculous match against Sociedad when the Queen had literally died 2 hours before. And it was the weirdest match I've ever watched of football. I almost felt like I shouldn't be watching it. It was really weird how it made everybody feel that way about it. But for me, Rashford's in over Abraham if they're going to play it that way at the moment. He's in better form, I think. But there's what's your take on the people on the outside of the squad? Just to name a couple of others. Jared Bowen, someone else to throw in there. Ben White.
I think players that haven't played. So Jack Harrison, no idea why he's on this graphic. I guess that was Tom that asked for him to be on there. Yeah, ridiculous that he's on here. Been pretty good this season, but never played for England. Never going to come in now for a World Cup unless we have a barrage of injuries. Ben White. I do like Ben White just because he can play a few different positions. I think he's got that. Tony is again never going to go to the World Cup now. He's not going to play him in these 2 games. He's not going to go to the World Cup. Ollie Watkins for me needs to catch fire. I think for me it'd be out of like Ollie Watkins, Abraham. If someone catches like fire, and maybe like a Rashford or a Sancho can go into that forward category as well. But yeah, the people that I've never played really, like JWP is not going, Ward-Prowse. Bowen can, because again, he's been in England squads before. So I think he could, if he catches the kind of form that he had last season, he is one that can come in. Jordan Henderson, is that on the bench? Or Dean Henderson?
That's Dean Henderson.
Dean Henderson.
He's probably the only other keeper that stands a chance, isn't he?
Isn't it? Yeah, whatever.
James Maddison was somebody else that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. I haven't written on this list.
It's a big 6 weeks, isn't it, for certain players? If they have absolute worldies and like scoring every week and assisting every week, he has to take that player because there'll be uproar if he doesn't. But if everyone just keeps doing what they're doing, I think that squad we've got there is pretty much going to be the squad, isn't it? He's not going to test too much now. We can't test at all, can he? Before we play a run.
Yeah. So I agree. It feels very much like, give or take 1 or 2 players, it's going to be this way. But I wanted to have that conversation anyway, because I think it's just very topical. So get in touch with us if you want to let us know your thoughts. Drop us a message and whatever else, because genuinely, I think it's quite an interesting conversation to have, and also be interesting for us over these next. I mean, I assume the squad will be announced game week 14, 15, probably before, because there's only a week, I think, between game week 16 and the first match, I think. So it's crazy how close it is.
That'll be really interesting if they announce the squad before the last Premier League game.
I think they'll have to, really, looking at the squad. I think they'll have to look at just looking at the how close it is together. It'll be very close. I mean, they might not,
though, because some players are going to be pulling out of tackles.
That's very true, isn't it? Actually, yeah, they won't want to. They definitely won't want to be getting injured, will they? Fine. Well, there you go. So we've done other international teams' form. We've looked at the World Cup, and that's all the international. Oh, I was googling the new Brighton manager.
I did the same thing. He's got a decent record, hasn't he?
He has. I was quite surprised by the Brighton managers. So, well, let's just talk about De Zerbi, shall we? Very briefly.
He deserves the mention, doesn't he, on the pod?
Here he is. 5 things you need to know about the new manager. And I don't want Sports Brief to give me some cookies. But even though I'm kind of hungry. There you go. He managed Shakhtar beforehand. He's heavy metal possession-based football. Apparently, he's quite an attacking manager. Apparently, Juventus were showing interest in him. He seems like a relatively decent fit, even though apparently his formations he plays tend to not be the same as what Brighton are doing. But I don't think they'll change much of what Brighton have done, really.
I think he was going to win the league, wasn't he, with Shakhtar? I think there was cruising to that before.
They were miles ahead. Before Putin rocked up invading countries. So I think it'd be interesting. Brighton are definitely a wait and see at the moment, because when I was looking at the fixture difficulty ratings from now until game week 16, which for some reason it's taking me back to game week 14. I'm doing lots of clicking about for the YouTube watchers, so I'm really sorry. But game week 16, Brighton are right down at the bottom. of the fixture ticker: Liverpool away, Spurs, Brentford away, Forest at home, City away, Chelsea at home, Wolves away, and then Villa. It's a tough run of games. I'd be staying clear, to be honest, of Brighton assets. New managers in general, Scott, we'll touch on those as one of the main talking points. Before we move on to Chelsea and Potter, and obviously Thomas Tuchel going, they still haven't hired a Bournemouth manager. I felt like I'd missed something because I thought Bournemouth surely have hired someone, but they must have been really annoyed with Scott Parker.
Yeah,
They must have been like a brought into the office the next day. You're gone, mate. Bye. We haven't got any plan. Because it feels that way, doesn't it?
Oh, 100% does, doesn't it? I mean, there was a lot of talk about backrooms fallouts, wasn't there? And he was making jabs at them not getting in players and etc. And I know, like, I don't know if I mentioned this on previous podcasts. I know, like, even though they got promoted, they didn't have 100% support of the fans, just because they nearly bought a promotion last year. So, I mean, Gary O'Neill's done well, hasn't he? He got nominated for Manager of the Month. I know it was 2 games, but I think he won 1, drew 1.
Yeah, something like that.
And he came back from 2-0 down to beat Forest 3-2. Someone.
Yeah,
something like that.
Was it Forest? I think it was. Gary O'Neill's been mentioned. Chris Wilder, Sean Dyche.
Chris Wilder's weird.
I know, but have you seen, like,
he's doing terrible in Hillsborough?
Well, it's weird because in some papers are like, Wilder's nailed on, and then other people have said Wilder's out, never ever taken it. I did a bit of research on it last night, and the publications are really, really crossed. It feels like surely it's Gary O'Neill looking at the conversations that have been happening.
Yeah,
but yeah, Chris Wilder's been there, and it was either that or Sean Dyche of Bielsa's 20-1. Yeah, I mean the usual Allardyce and Redknapp, John Terry and Woodgate. I mean, just people who had never taken over in a million years.
Woodgate's at Bournemouth. Oh, well, Woodgate was a Bournemouth manager, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Right.
He did it for a little while, but yeah, it's O'Neill probably, and then or I thought it was going to Dyche was someone I thought it might potentially be, but there you go. So those are the odds there, and Bournemouth are top of the fixture ticket from game weeks 9 till 16. And they've got the best fixture run. I've seen a lot of
Dominic Solanke.
I've seen a lot of people mention Solanke as a third striker at 5.7 million. And I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're going to rotate him a little bit, he's okay. I mean, they've got Brentford at home, Leicester at home, Fulham away, Southampton at home. Those next 4 games are almost as good as it gets in terms from attacking perspective. Then West Ham, Spurs, which aren't that easy, and then Leeds and Everton. I mean, they've just got a really good run of fixtures. So if you did want to go for Solanke as a third striker, you know, it's not a bad option, but I wouldn't go as far to say it was a good option.
How many goals he got this year?
1. It doesn't feel like a lot.
1.
Yeah. So it's all a bit. You know, he's being mentioned because I think people are really struggling with that third striker. And what I will say, if you're struggling with your third striker, don't have one. Just go for 5 in midfield, and then rotate your defender with your 5th midfielder. Play a 4-4-2 stroke 3-5-2. And just go for it that way and just do Haaland and Mitrovic. It's not a problem. It's I've seen a lot of people really, because we did the statistics on strikers, didn't we, previously? And, you know, they've done really, really well this season. But don't try shoehorn Tony into your team if you don't really want to. I mean, Bournemouth away, fine, good fixture. Newcastle, not easy, away. Brighton at home, not easy. Chelsea at home, not easy. So from 10 through to 12, not easy fixtures at all. Villa, Wolves, Forest, 13 through 15. Okay, they're all right.
Interesting. That Villa fixture is red.
It's weird. And then City away in game week 16. So they've only really got a run of, they've got game week 9, then they've got 13, 14, 15 probably as decent fixtures. And Wolves have got one of the best defences in the league. So technically they've only really got 3 fixtures, and one's in 9, 13 and 15. So don't try shoehorn Tony in if you don't need to. Just save a bit of money, have it in the bank, because I'll touch on this now. So fixture runs from now until game week 16. So Bournemouth have a decent run the whole way. So do West Ham, other than game week 12. which is Liverpool away. I mean, they don't remember, they have Man United away in game week 14, but that game can go either way. But they've got a really, really good run. So maybe 2 tougher fixtures, but they're spaced out, so don't worry about that. Leicester, their run is pretty much amazing, bar City at home in game week 14. I know the form's not been incredible, obviously, at the bottom of the league with 1 point, but they've got the ability to do it. I've no doubt about it. They're scoring goals still.
They look good. They look better the last game. They played. Was it West Ham?
Spurs, wasn't it?
Spurs, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Son.
Yeah.
Scored 1 million goals.
Well, Leicester just quit, didn't they, with 20 minutes to go, and Son decided to get 19 point all. But you look at Leicester, and I still think they can score goals. I've seen a few people do the Ward and Everson double up on their wildcards for goalkeepers. I mean, it's not a terrible thing to do, but it's also not a very good thing to do. But at the same time, you're saving money, and then I think people have been nervous about the Pope and Trippier double up, and they've just been really wanting Trippier in their team, so they've been doing that. But anyway, more on fixture runs. Newcastle, they've got a good run. They've only got game week 11, Man United away, 13 Spurs away, and then Chelsea in game week 16. Other than that, Fulham, Brentford, Everton, Villa, and Southampton. So they've got a really good run. Disappointed Isak's out because I was happy having him as a bit of a differential up front, but there you go. Palace, 10 through 16. So they've got Chelsea at home next, which is tough, but then they've got a great run, 10 through 16. All of those games are fantastic. So looking at Zaha and sometimes potentially a defender. Fulham game weeks 9 through 14, fantastic. Then saving money and having a bit of money in the bank, I don't think that's a bad move at all, because Liverpool's run from game week 12 through to 16, I know they've got Spurs away in 15, but they've got West Ham in game week 12, Forest game week 13, Leeds game week 14, and Southampton game week 16. They've got Brighton, Arsenal, and City before then. So in my wildcard, I had no Liverpool. If you're wildcarding this week again, having no Liverpool is totally fine. The template seems to be to have Trent and either Salah or De Bruyne in your team for wildcard. I've seen on Twitter. I'm going to have none of them in my team this week because I don't think any of them are the right move, personally. And I feel a lot of people are a bit scared of not having them because of obviously how, explosive they can be. And also about using transfers up further down the line. But I think having a bit of money in the bank is not a problem at all, because you might want to upgrade to Salah or to Trent game week 12, and you get 3 games, I think, to look at them where they're not going to... I personally don't think they'll hurt you massively, not having them in those 3 games. But famous last words. Manchester City, you're never not having Haaland at the moment anyway, because he's just in ridiculous form. And they play Man U and Southampton in the next 2, which anything can happen. They have a really interesting couple of games. Liverpool away, nobody in game week 12, and then Brighton at home in game week 13. So what a lot of people will have are two City assets or 3 City assets. If you have 2 City assets and let's say a Martinelli in game week 12 when Arsenal and City don't play each other and they blank, then I've had a few. I have one question. I have one question about who would you sacrifice, and it all depends about who you've got the most value in, who you can buy back the easiest, and who you can replace the easiest. I don't think it would ever be Haaland you'd sell. It'd be between Martinelli and Cancelo, and I think there seems to be a relatively easy move from Cancelo to Trent if you wanted to in game week 12. Just then you wouldn't get Cancelo back, obviously. But that's something that we'll be able to do. But just watch it. And when you're putting your wildcard teams together, I've seen a few people with Saliba, Martinelli, Cancelo, De Bruyne, and Haaland. Again, not a problem, but you've got 5 players that won't play in game week 12. So you have to then have a look at how your team's going to be structured going into that. Because if you've got 5 players, then you need to realistically transfer at least 2 of them out in game week 10, 11, or 12. So that's 2 of your 3 next free transfers taken up, getting rid of players that you brought in on a wild card. So again, I'd be very careful of that, making sure you don't have more than 4 players from those teams. And why would you want Arsenal assets anyway, really, with their fixtures? Spurs and Liverpool, yeah, they have Leeds away, but then they blank. So those next 2 games, I know they're both at home. They're not teams I'm going to be flocking to Arsenal for. Dear God, give me some Arsenal assets against Spurs and Liverpool. Just not going to do that. So if you're going to go without anything, that's fine. I'd potentially be looking to be without Arsenal. Where are you at the moment, Scotty, in terms of City and Arsenal players? Have you got them?
City and Arsenal, yeah, I've got 3 City and 1 Arsenal. So, but I think my plan is this week anyway. I'm getting rid of Martinelli this week for Madeocean or Zaha, one or the other. Not sure which one yet. Maybe a Bowen if I'm feeling a bit fruity. But yeah, I've got again loads of money in the bank. I've got like 6 million in the bank or something ridiculous. So yeah, I definitely want to get rid. I nearly didn't have Martinelli in my wild card, but figured I'd just have a roll of dice with him for 1 week. He didn't do a lot.
And they beat Brentford 3-0. So it
felt annoying that.
Yeah, it felt a little bit unlucky that not to get any returns, but it's just the way that the cookie crumbles.
But yeah, I'm quite happy to have my free. Like I'm going to say, we're not going to have an Arsenal asset anyway, and it'll probably be potentially, or it'll be Haaland and De Bruyne probably start my bench in game week 12, because I think I'll probably get Cancelo out and get Trent in that week.
It's and then obviously depending on form, it might be a Salah in for De Bruyne situation if he's looking good. If he's looking good again, if not, then maybe just a Diaz again if he's looking good.
Yeah, but again, like you say, that's why I wanted the money in the bank. That's why I've not gone kind of too giddy with everything. So I want to make those moves if they're there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the right thing to do. Just a couple more fixture runs to cover. Everton, I think, either game week 12 or 13 to game week 16. They've got a good sort of finishing off run. Wolves, game weeks 11 to 14 or 11 to 15, again, decent run. But the other ones to take into account from game week 9 are Leeds, who have a really good run, actually, from 9 through 13. They have got Arsenal in game week 11, but Villa, Palace, Arsenal, Leicester and Fulham, Liverpool in game week 14, but then Bournemouth in 15 and Spurs in 16. So having a lot of people with like someone like Sinistera in their team, maybe an Aronson.
Don't forget that Jack Harrison, that guy who's going to the World Cup.
Yes, Jack Harrison, of course. But these, I do think Leeds players should be on your radar, maybe for one of them from an attacking perspective to gamble on. And Sinistera's returned 10 points in game week 5 and 5 points in game week 6. So he's someone that looks pretty good. Aronson in his last 4 has got 2 returns, a goal and an assist. So they're not massively explosive, but again, they look like players that could give you options, and they're decent value. Sinistera at 6.5 and Aronson at 5.5, and they're both less than 1.5% owned. So potentially a couple of differentials. Chelsea are really interesting. They've probably got the best 4 fixtures out of anybody: Palace, Wolves, Villa and Brentford, before they play United, Brighton and Arsenal and Newcastle, which is a tough 4 games. But the next 4 games, I'm going to be doubled up on Chelsea, and I've Reece James and Sterling. I'm going to be captaining Sterling this week.
You're taking out De Bruyne this week then?
Yeah, De Bruyne is out for me this week.
Wow. Against your boys. Backing your boys.
Backing my boys. And then, going to... then this is one of the other things you need to do. You need to have a look at your captaincy. So when it comes down to game week... people will still captain Haaland this week, because he's probably the most captain player, because he's playing Man United at home, and that's just fine for Haaland, really. Big derby, he'll love it. He can't wait to play them, and I'm sure he'll deliver a goal at some point. But game week 11, it's Liverpool away. Game week 12, it's a blank. So those are the only 2 game weeks where you won't captain Haaland, certainly, I think. So you need to look at your other premium being a player that has good fixtures in 11 and 12. And this is why I'm moving away from De Bruyne and moving to Sterling. So this week I'm going to captain Sterling against Crystal Palace. And then I'm going to captain him against Villa, and I'm going to captain him against Brentford in those games. And give or take, there is a chance that I'll captain Mitrovic in the game he has. He's got Bournemouth at home and then Villa at home in those 2 game weeks. There's a chance. But I'm bringing Sterling in for this reason. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and bang on about Chelsea being in incredible form, but this is where Sterling is a player that he can really go off against teams that aren't very good. My reservations are that they lost to Southampton 2-1 away, and they lost to Leeds 3-0 away, and they're away games. And now they did beat Everton away.
It's a tough game to go to Palace. You know, I always think any game away at Palace is that small pitch.
I do.
Brave, Alex.
I just think that it's an opportunity this week to do something a bit different.
Yeah, I think if I was in your position, I would.
And
because
hopefully
it's not a massive gamble. It's not really a gamble really at all. But it's calculated, isn't it? It's not like you're going for like James Ward-Prowse captain, something like that.
And I have got Haaland.
Yeah,
that's the other thing as well. And
I think he's going to get sent off against Man U. You know,
I'd hope so.
I think he's going to lose his head.
Sterling's got 25 points in his last 3 games, so I feel like he's a player that's in decent form. He's less than 10% owned. I need to have a differential to catch back
on Monday.
Wow, he always misses. He never scores in the big games, Scott. He never delivers in the big games, but he will again in these other ones. But so I completely agree. I think Palace isn't the easiest game in the world, but I'm happy with him against these other teams. So when you're contemplating a wildcard in game week 9, you need to think about who's going to be your captain in game week 11 and game week 12. And game week 12 could be Salah, West Ham at home, easy. But you're not going to captain Salah against Man City at home in game week 11. So you'd have to think about other options. And that's why some people have looked to Harry Kane, or even Heung-min Son now, Everton at home in game week 11. So that's another option, something that you could end up going for. But the fixtures surrounding that are Arsenal, Brighton and Man United all away, and then Newcastle at home. So I don't like Spurs' fixtures. I think this is where the captaincy matrix, this is where you're doing a captaincy matrix for me is really important. You know, this is when you're thinking about your transfers, you need to think about your captain moving forward. And if you're on a wild card, you've got a bit of a free hit at making sure that you've done that. So do a captaincy matrix. Know who you're going to captain in 11 and 12 and you're not captaining Haaland. It's just a really, really key bit of advice that's not me telling you which players to pick, just actually how to think about things moving forward. So you can actually listen to that piece of advice. Not worry about the players to pick from this season. Forest have got a good run. And then Arsenal have got a bit of a hit and miss one from after the next couple of games, so I won't worry about them too much. So for me, I'm looking at a wildcard template right now. If for people would be Pope or someone like Gaeta, or maybe even Fabianski or Sarr if you wanted to, and Ward as your backup, or Everson. And then at the back it would be Reece James. For me, is the only one that's really nailed. I like Cancelo. I've got Cancelo. Also like Trippier, maybe a Palace defender or a West Ham defender. Looking at their statistics, they've got the 3rd best expected goals conceded this season, even though they're really not doing well at all. They've been on good form. And then, budget Williams seems to be like the one. Someone like that, maybe even you potentially go Emerson, but just have a quick look into Emerson, because I did hear on one podcast that you shouldn't go for him, and I don't actually really know why. So I think I missed something there. So have a look into to Emerson. And then midfield, Zaha, Maddison, Sinisterra, Pereira for a budget, something like that. I mean, Sinisterra is just an example budget player. And then I'd go for Sterling as your like premium in that position, but you could also look at someone like Son if you wanted to. But I worry about his minutes still. But the other midfield premium kind of needs to be the person you're considering for captaincy, unless you're going for Haaland and Mitrovic up front and you're comfortable captaining Mitrovic against Bournemouth at home and then Villa at home, which isn't a bad decision at all. That's something that it would, if he's on good form at that point. Those are 2 of the best fixtures in the league in terms of attacking perspective. So going for someone who's on form again there is spot on. And then +1 up top. So I'd have a keeper and Ward, James, plus a few others, Cancelo probably in there, Zaha, Maddison, plus a few others, and then Haaland and Mitrovic. The rest of them are all kind of up for grabs. Scotty, your take on the fixtures? Have you had a bit of time to have a look at them? Because I know you've not looked at anything international break in terms of fixtures.
Not anything, you know me. I look about 20 minutes before the deadline and panic. I think we were saying before the deadline, like you got to be looking at your West Ham and Palace players, especially in that midfield for me. So keep an eye on how sort of your mid-range players do, because that's where a lot of your differential points will come from. Again, doing this podcast has opened my eyes a bit, about the Man City situation. And especially the Arsenal one as well. You want to be not making sure you've not got too many of those players. But yeah, it'd be interesting because West Ham started the season pretty poor. Palace they've done all right, but nothing amazing. And Leicester obviously really poor. Now they've all got a really good run of fixtures. It'd be really good to see which players now over the next couple of game weeks come into the forefront a little bit. So yeah, a couple of players to keep an eye on. I know for me, Bowen, Madison, Zaha, better decision there going forward. So, yeah, interesting few game weeks coming up. And, some big calls to be made.
It looks like no doubles are going to happen before the World Cup either. All of the games have been scheduled. Yeah, all the games have been scheduled TV-wise. So it looks like we're kind of set for how the fixtures are going to play out. Obviously, like I said to you before, there were 3 games that weren't televised. Going to be televised. They got cancelled. So I mean, they could just be fitting anywhere, slotted anywhere. But we will see. I think that's a bit of a to be confirmed on that one for me.
One thing as well I would say is if you're looking at Isaac, if you've got him and panicking about like he's got, he's not out for a long period of time. Have a look who you would bring in. Are you going to play them this game week? If the answer is no, what's the point in wasting the transfer on him? Keep him. He's likely probably going to be back next week. So that's one thing I would look at as well.
I agree. Don't panic and waste a transfer. And don't panic and waste a transfer on Nathan Patterson if he's sat on your bench. He was going to sit on your bench anyway. So he's just going to sit on your bench and be injured instead. So don't worry about it. Don't panic with that. Don't change the plan. Wanted to quickly have a look at our. I know we've talked a lot there. So before we get on to just looking at the fixtures and captaincy and talking about the deadline, I did have a look at what our table predictions were going to be at the beginning of the season, which I thought was quite interesting. Has that not come up? That's not come up. Has that gone off? Let me find it. Hold on. Let me find the table prediction. I'll come back to that in a second. But yes, I wanted to have a look at our tables. Can you see that?
Yep, can see that now. Yeah.
Fine. Okay. Well, I think that's probably a bit of a better view anyway than what we were doing before. So I don't know what your new table prediction would be, but I'll quickly have a look at mine compared to what I thought. So I had City, Liverpool, Spurs, Man U, Chelsea, Man U, Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham. I've gone City, Spurs, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man U, Chelsea, and Newcastle, and then West Ham. So I still think Newcastle, West Ham will turn it round, but I think Newcastle will qualify for Europe over West Ham now. I moved Brighton up a place. Brentford up from being relegated. I thought they'd get relegated. I was wrong. I think this season I've stuck Bournemouth and Southampton in there with Forest now. I thought Forest would just survive. So only a few minor changes. The main big drop would be really Leicester by about 6 places. Other than that, it's relatively similar. Tom went for Liverpool to win the league, and now he's gone for Liverpool to come fourth. City, Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man U, and Newcastle he had, and now he's gone City, Arsenal, Spurs, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man U, and Newcastle. And he thinks Leicester will go down with Forest and Bournemouth rather than Brentford. Scott, you had City, Liverpool, Spurs, Man U, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Leicester. I'm assuming the Leicester prediction's going to change, but
yeah,
any other changes to the top?
Yeah, I'd say the same.
Yeah,
I think Arsenal are going to fall off. They've got a really hard run of fixtures now. Man City, win the league. Liverpool second, Spurs third. I think Man U can grind to fourth. A lot of chase in Chelsea, so fifth. And Arsenal, they're going to drop off and finish sixth. But I think it'll be really close. Yeah, Leicester, whack them down a few places. I definitely don't think they're going to go down. Maybe wrong. Tom might turn out to be a genius, but too much quality in that team to go down. And I know we've said that about teams before. One being Leeds United, West Ham in the past. But yeah, I think they're too good to go down. Too much quality in there. And I think if they keep Brendan, I think that would be smart as well. Over the next, obviously, nice run of fixtures the next few games. Big few games for him. Bottom three. I mean, Southampton have started well, haven't they?
Yeah.
So
I've kept them in there. I'm being a bit stubborn, really.
Yeah, so am I. I'm going to be stubborn and keep them in there. Just because I look at the other teams and think Brentford, Fulham, Leeds, Palace, they'll all stay up. I'd whack Everton down a couple of places. I'd maybe swap Everton and Leeds now, if I'm honest. But I think they'll stay up as well, Everton. And yeah, I would bring Leicester down a lot, and I would bring Villa down a fair bit and put Newcastle up.
You think Newcastle will be 7th? Or do you think it'd be West Ham still?
Newcastle will be 7th, yeah. I think there will be, yeah.
And in terms of our top scoring assets, you went Salah, Son and Kane at the beginning of the season. I'm obviously assuming that you're probably replacing Son with Haaland, maybe. And then what do you think? Do you think they're going to be...
I don't remember even doing that.
Yeah, I look back at our predictions.
Fantastic.
We did a game week 1 podcast. I was like,
Son and Kane. Oh yeah, I would get Sonny out now and get Haaland in there.
Yeah, I was Salah, KDB, and Kane, and now that's probably going to be Haaland. I still think Kane will probably end up being up there, and I for KDB, I might end up replacing Salah with him, but Salah, that feels really dangerous,
doesn't he?
That feels really dangerous, doesn't it? Dropping these guys, but it's always fun to look back at these. And just finally, before we have a look at because we're running a little bit shorter on time, so I'll before we just finally have a look at the fixtures, your thoughts on Potter to Chelsea and Tuchel being sacked?
Yeah, surprised. Not surprised that Chelsea did it. They're a club that don't really give the managers any time, and that's been the case since Roman Abramovich has come into the club. And to be fair, even before that, I feel like growing up, Chelsea have always been a club that I've not really given the time. Obviously, we've grown up in the eras of Wenger and Ferguson. I swear, like every other club kind of just changed all the time. Surprised, not surprised that they got Potter in. I think he deserves it. He deserves the opportunity. It's a bit of a risk for him. He was, nothing really to lose at Brighton, so to speak. Anything he does when keeping him up is really going to be on expectations. So big pressure on him. Be interesting to see how he does. He's got a couple of players he's worked with before there. So yeah, we've only had one game. Is it so far? 2 games?
Yeah, one
game in the Champions League, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it's good. Bit of from an England perspective, a bit annoying at the same time because Southgate will be leaving after the World Cup, won't he?
Yeah, definitely. Unless he wins. In fact, even if he wins the World Cup,
I think he'll leave. So I think this is definitely his last World Cup. It's just a shame because I think Potter would be the go-to guy.
I completely agree. That's exactly the thought process I had. I don't know who else right now for me I would put in there, and I'm a bit biased in the sense that I really want an English manager to be a manager of the England team.
Same, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's managers like Pochettino out there, someone like Tuchel out there. These managers are really top level managers, but I just want an English manager to win the World Cup with England. It's just anyway, whatever. A bit biased on that one.
Is an English manager going to win the Premier League for the first time? That'll be interesting.
Very interesting. Good old. It's just the Scottish. They're just so good.
Yeah. Toss up between him and Lampard this season, isn't it?
Bloody Lampard. Lampard's 11-1 to be the next England manager. Just please be a god.
And is that? I'd rather see Rooney be England manager if we're going down that route.
Yeah, so would I. And I don't want any of them to be. So deadline, early kickoff, Arsenal Spurs. Saturday the 1st of October. Deadline is 11 a.m. on that Saturday, so it's a Saturday deadline. Arsenal Spurs, then we have Bournemouth Brentford, Palace Chelsea, Fulham Newcastle, Liverpool Brighton, Southampton Everton, and then the evening game is West Ham Wolves. Then we have the Manchester Derby, followed by Leeds against Villa on Sunday, and Monday Night Football, Leicester against Forest, which I'm looking forward to that Monday Night Football because I think anything can happen in that game, and I feel like I'm just looking forward to watching a Monday Night Football again. I enjoy watching Monday Night Football, even if it's just on a repeat at some point. I'll just enjoy it. Captaincy this week, no problem whatsoever going with Haaland against United at home. I think if you've got Salah in your team going against Brighton's also okay at home. Yeah. I think it's we never know what this Brighton team's going to deliver. I think going for Chelsea against Palace with a new manager bounce and everything else is okay. a bit of a gamble, but it's all right. And then that seems. I feel like this week's there's no real like amazing standout captain.
No.
If you wanted to go with anyone as a differential, you can do. Leicester are playing Forest. You know, if you wanted to go nuts and go for a Maddison or something, if he's fit, you know, like yeah. Poor Vardy's not getting picked as much. I mean, normally that honestly, that I looked at normally Vardy would be somebody I'd consider, but just he's just not even he's not close enough to it this season. Yeah, I think generally speaking, this week is one of those weeks where you can take a bit of a gamble on your captain, and it shouldn't hurt you too much if you get it very, very, very wrong. But then we've got a Saturday deadline the week after, and then we've got a Friday deadline the week after that, before we have midweek madness on everything's on Prime. So as you can see, I'm just flicking through here. That's game week 12. Game week 13 is a Saturday deadline. 14 is a Saturday deadline. 15 is a Saturday deadline. 16 is a Saturday deadline. Every single one now moving forward has had their TV fixtures scheduled. So I'd be surprised if there's any double game weeks. So just take them out of your mind moving forward, and you know, you never know if we'll just have to deal with them when they arrive. And to be honest, if the double game weeks will probably be for like Palace, and everyone will have Zaha anyway against Brighton. They'll be for like Bournemouth or Southampton, and you know, don't break your team for a Bournemouth double game week. Remember the King and Dennis lot last season. Jesus, don't lose your mind. So that we're going to do a little bit more in terms of positives and negatives for the season, but I think that's brought us pretty much to 50 odd minutes an hour. So we'll call it from there. And if anyone has any other questions or queries or anything they want to send in, then feel free to do so. Anything that we've not covered off, we didn't get too many questions in this week, so I feel like people are still a little bit switched off from the international break. So if you do have any questions moving forward, then please feel free. You guys make the podcast in the sense that if you do send me a question in, then I can I can absolutely answer it. Just to respond to a couple that came in, all from Callum. Will Ward ever play football again? That was one of his questions. Callum, they have an XG conceded of like 11 this season. They've conceded 22-23, so I would not be surprised if Everson comes in. Is football coming home? We both think yes, and we've touched base on international form. So thank you very much for sending in those questions. I guess you said he sent in 3, so I wanted to make sure I addressed it. Thanks everyone for listening this week, and yeah, good luck. Green arrows all round. Damn right, I need one, and we'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.